opportunity for all of us to talk about the sustainable development goals and the economy, circular economy that session is about. I would like to start my session with. I hope you're able to see the screen, and what I want to start off with is this is not a green drill. This is not a green drill. This is a climate emergency. What exactly do I mean by that? Is you need to stop and think about what we are doing. So the bigger question that we have in front of us is plastic waste. And specifically when you envision plastic waste in different form, what we see around is, in the form of, let's say, a bottle or, a wrapper or any other different categories of waste that we see around when it comes to plastic. It goes into the landfills, it goes into ocean, which is what exactly is happening is it is polluting the environment to an extent that might not even be possible to go back from. Now, there are certain cases that we keep hearing wherein the micropollutants, the plastics, uh, the natural species dying. Like when we talk about the ocean plastics, then the aquatic life is getting endangered. With the adversity that is happening when we're talking about the landfills, the soil is completely getting spoiled. The kind of yield that we are getting, the vegetable or the grains that are grown, that has so much of issues that that are happening. But do we really take a pause? Do we really take a moment to understand that while we are using this material, which is plastic, for making our lives better, by not disposing it off responsibly, we are actually damaging the entire planet. And the immediate damage that happens is to the near and dear ones around us. It's not somebody else. Now, how exactly do we start thinking about in terms of the solution? How exactly do we start portraying that in a way wherein people understand how to do that? So what you see over here is I'm going to talk about PPPP model. Now you would have heard about the three P's, which is public-private partnership. What I am talking about over here is public-private people partnership. And over here, people play a very important role. How exactly? Let me give you an example. Let's say we've heard about a city in India called Indore, which is year on year it is rated as one of the cleanest cities in the country. How exactly is that happening? The government came up with a circular saying that we would want our waste to be segregated responsibly, and at the same time, if somebody is not following that, government will impose fine. But do you think it is possible if the participation of common man and people, industries are not there? Highly unlikely, right? So that is where the 4P models is very important when we talk about saving the entire world. Now, public, private, and people partnership. How different it sounds. Like, for example, when we are constructing a highway, usually what happens is there's land that belongs to the government, but the government does not have the money to build the road. So somebody else, as a private entity, will put money and then they will recover it. What happens when we are talking about the pollution that is happening? The government is involved. A company can get engaged and they say that what, we will take responsibility of funding a certain project. For example, let's say a river cleanup, or maybe a landfill cleanup. So in that case, what happens is it has to be integrated with people coming in and playing a very important role, and that is how different organizations at large, cities at large, and countries at large can really transform the way we look into the system. Now, moving ahead, right? What exactly is happening? If I talk about what used to happen earlier was a linear development, right? We needed the energy and material input that was leading to production, that was again going to the distribution cycle. We as consumers are using it, disposing it, but irresponsibly. What was happening because of that and what continues to happen because of that is the wastage and the emission because of that that is completely destroying the planet. Now, slowly and steadily, what is happening that we see around is reusing that. A lot of people are also remanufacturing from the waste and maybe coming with alternate materials. We've heard about certain examples like now t-shirts are getting manufactured by the waste plastic. Right? There are different other categories of material like very recently I got to know that the acoustic boards are now made by using the PET bottle fibers that gets recycled. Now, for this to completely become a circular economy, what exactly I believe that should be done is at each and every step, there has to be a conscious effort in understanding that, let's say, we are doing the production. Are we responsible enough that during the production stage itself, whatever wastage is going to happen, are we taking care of that? When the material is out of the factory, it is going for the distribution. Are we taking care in that level also that the, the wastage, the unnecessary pollution that we are creating? And I'll more specifically talk about the plastic pollution because of the industry that I come from. Even in that case, can we be more responsible? For example, let's say if I'm a manufacturer and I'm giving bottles out, I have to be responsible enough in ensuring that we have a platform to collect it back. Otherwise, what's happening is we are at one place, we are giving our consumers better product, but the thing is, it's also leading to a lot of pollution. While we are consuming, what's happening is simple example. While we are consuming milk, which typically comes in packets, can we be conscious enough that we are not cutting that entire packet off and creating challenge for the next cycle, which is maybe the recyclers. So when we combine this entire, what we see in the value chain, this is where the circular economy will start making sense. Otherwise, what I've seen in my personal capacity is it's a good topic to talk, but it's a very tough topic to actually go on the ground and implement. I'm pretty sure you always will resonate with this that we keep hearing about not to use single-use plastic, not to use certain other grades of plastic, but how exactly are we implementing it? Do we really, in our day-to-day life, do we take a pause and actually implement? Not really. I'll share an example. One a milk company based out of Bangalore. What they started was, if I remember the name correctly, it's called Akshay. So when they deliver, when we subscribe to that, they also hand out a bag which is supposed to be just kept on your door. So they say that see what when you use the wrappers, when you have used the milk, clean it and just put it back to the bag. Every week, every 14 days, the delivery guy actually comes and collects it back. Now that's an initiative taken by the company, but what has happened is it has instilled the thought in the user, and I'm personally a user of that particular milk brand. And what I do is now I'm responsible. So what has happened is right, the entire value chain over here is being taken care of, and people are also more responsible. And that's where I'll connect back to the 4P models. People play a very important role. But at the same time, people have to be told that, you know what, you have to follow certain processes, and those processes have to be simple. Once we start making that complex, the entire thing goes for a toss. And that's ultimately the harsh reality. At the same time, while reuse, repair, and recycle, we continue to talk about that. But until unless the recycled product or the repair or the reuse is not cost effective, trust me, there are no buyers in the industry, there are no buyers out there anywhere across the world. So while we are in the process of ensuring that whatever we are producing that has to be responsibly segregated, reused, one very important aspect that has to be always kept in mind is, are we cost effective? If not, then it's going to be a battle. Then we will continue to see the pollution that continues to plague us in different form, and plastic is going to plague us for a very long time. I'll end my talk with a small little thought. It's actually a poem. A packet of milk poured in a bowl. Where do I pour the packet of milk? With this, I would like to end my presentation, and I will pass it on for the other speakers to share their thoughts. But at the same last thoughts from my side would be that while we are doing good for the environment, while we are progressing and making our world a better place, we have to be mindful at our individual capacity that a small little effort can actually translate to a very big change. Thank you so much, everyone. If there are any questions for me, I would be more than happy to answer that in the subsequent.
Thank you so much, Sourabh sir. Now we will have Akkas next to make his presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be talking about circular economy and waste reduction in textile industries. As I am working in textile industries, textile industries is very much popular in Bangladesh, and it causes uh, larger foreign currency gainer in Bangladesh, and also employed a lot of people, and most of them are women. So I will share glimpse how Bangladeshi people's policies acting on circular economy, and also textile industries also working on circular economy model. So at the very beginning, I should thank to G20 Summit for inviting me to speak about circular economy. So I'm also proud for getting this invitation. Last 3 days, I was attending many sessions and also learned many things by this floor. So talking about current practice in and prospect in circular economy in Bangladesh, among the component of circular economy model, recycling is mainly followed in Bangladesh. However, the concept of reuse has recently gained significant attention among the Bangladeshi people, with e-commerce practice on Facebook helping break down the taboos of utilizing second-hand goods. Like in Bangladesh, you will find a lot of second-hand reselling Facebook groups, and people can easily sell their household advertise. It is very good for use purpose. Also, many industries and manufacturers are likewise concerned about the reducing resource uses and resulting in less waste production. Recycle waste, however, it is potentially significant compared to the produced waste. One of the most component recycle produce is that garbage produced in basically city area, primarily corrected in urban people, those who are part of Bangladeshi informal sector. In Bangladesh, a lot of urban people you will find in here. They are basically collected waste material from urban area. In case of Dhaka city alone, 0.15 million people directly involved in this waste collection process, and around 522 cities and towns in Bangladesh production discharge garbage almost 50,000 tons per day. It is yearly around 6 million tons, causing several environmental pollution. However, one significant study found that waste collection efficiently at different urban areas of Bangladesh on average 55%, which is not under satisfactory level. So, for the continuous generation of waste, Bangladesh government initiated 3R, reduce, reuse, and recycle strategy since 2010, and they are also training to different kind of professional to get their knowledge and to enhance their knowledge. And it was sponsored by UNDP and Ministry of Environment and Forest. So as I am working in textile industries, textile industries, there will be a lot of wastage coming from fabric and also supply chain. Talking about fabric item, as I talked earlier, the garment sector is the biggest earner of foreign currency of Bangladesh, according to the private statistics. About 5,000 garment factories offer up to 4.2 million jobs. And a study conducted in my locality, currently I am working in Naranganj, it is beside Dhaka, and that study found that every day almost 120 to 130 tons of garments waste are generated in this area. So another research also said that Bangladesh textile industries produced about 1.80 million metric ton fabric and generated around 260 million cubic meter of wastewater. So after garments wastage, the major environmental issue is water. Per day, one single kg of any fabric, it is charged around uh, 35 to 60 liter per liter. That means 1 kg of fabric for making dyeing, waste, and washing and everything, it charged around 35 to 60 liter per kg. So that is why the consumption of water is very high, and a study found that the groundwater level in this area is exponentially getting down. The research was also estimated that by 2025, Bangladesh textile industries will produce about 3.5 million metric ton fabric, causing around 500 millions of wastewater. Bangladesh has huge opportunity as we do not use the product or we do not sell the product directly, but we sell to our buyers. So we can co-create the circular economy model in fashion and textile industries. So model also, moreover, the wastage recycle of different sectors huge impact on economy as it is one income source for many people. There are many shops which is usually process garments wastage and wastage amount of pieces and different salaries. So these are the wastage. If you talk about the major sources of wastage coming from textile and garments industries, so we call it jute. That means the jute is the fabric or fiber related wastage coming from garments. Mostly we recycle it and to try to reuse, by making clean dust, making pockets, and making cotton of use for production carbon, pillow, mattress. Alternatively, the other rejected clothes are used by a small sector for making comparatively low quality clothes for selling in local market. And also by processing this jute item, uh, there are a lot of small entrepreneur have been grown, and they are still working on this kind of entrepreneur, employed up to 2 to 3, even 5 people. Their salary range around uh, 25,000 to 60,000 in a month. So it is good as Bangladesh is a growing economy and textile is a bigger part or largest uh, foreign currency gainer. There are huge waste in case of plastic pollution as people in the closest area. Uh, So for my recommendation will be like taking some innovative business model like product as a service. Also extended producer responsibility can help in this area for making new business, eco-friendly product design, and using eco-friendly yarn like recycled material. Yes, that's that's all about that.
So much, Akkas. It was
Akkas,
really
we are here.
yes.
Okay, so that's all about my textile industry's waste reduction and practice. You see, also the many projects are working. Many entrepreneur still working to reduce or recycle for different purpose of fabric item, like they are is to make different product, as I said, clothes item and all.
Thank you so much, Akkas. We will move forward to Faisal. Faisal, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, yes.
I was struggling previously. Um, okay, so it's afternoon here actually. I'm sure it's evening in India by now and other places. Um, I think we've been having a nice conversation so far, and I'm reiterating what excuse me, maybe I might pronounce your name very wrongly. Sourabh, per what he said. I think he took the words out of my mouth as to some of the issues I would have wanted to talk about when we look at circular economy. So you realize that in as much as circular economy tries to promote the idea of sustainability or sustainable development, with the long run of which we think that what are we trying to achieve? Become more environmental conscious, economically sound, and improve upon social well-being in various ways. You realize that the implementation of circular economy, um, especially when we look at the processes that it goes through and the outcomes we have, has been criticized so far. Although a little bit of conversations do not go to those areas, we are much focused on, okay, let's recycle. How many plastic have you recycled as a business? Then you count, you have a good number of it. But in-depthly, there are issues that we have to look out for, especially when we look at the process and the implementation and the outcomes that we are having. And you realize that my colleague mentions a few points about that, the waste that we generate at the end of it. How do we manage those? And these are issues at the outcome level. At the process, you realize that businesses engage in circular economy in different ways. But the issue here is that what do they do or how do they do it? You realize a lot of criticisms have come in terms of we lack true circularity, because what circular economy says, okay, let's use more renewable energy, let's reduce waste. But what do we get out of this waste reduction plan that we think we are doing? We end up what? Using the normal fossil fuel energy for our production process, which leads to more climate issues or environmental issues. We come up with a lot of waste, especially when we talk about those who do not engage in, let's say, best segregation practices when they pick up their plastics, and you end up going to wash them. You use a lot of water to wash before you start your recycling process. Then you throw those waters away. That's waste we are generating at the long run or in the long run. So what are we doing to curb some of these things to make sure that circularity as a practice is more sustainable or is towards the pathways for sustainability, where we say, yes, it is environmentally conscious, it's still economically viable, and it promotes the social well-being of people. So when you look at furthermore, especially with social sustainability, when we take that aspect and how it's been implemented into circularity, then there's a whole lot of conversation when we talk about that. There are a lot of research that says that defining or measuring social aspect of circular economy is more kind of difficult for people to do. But with the environment, you know, we have various measures for which we could do that in terms of emissions that you are reducing, in terms of plastics that you are taking out of the environment. So it makes it much easier to measure with environmental issues as compared to social issues. And economic seems to be much better. So here you realize when we are implementing our circular processes, we need to take care of some of these angles. We need to ensure that the three pillars are something that we are moving in a just way or in a just transition process, so that we don't leave one aspect while focusing on the other. Because when we do that, then we can't even think of, say, we are achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Because how are we achieving it? You are taking plastics, you are reducing consumption, promoting SDG 11. At the same time, you are putting more waste outside there. Then SDG 3 of health becomes another problem at the long run. So what are we doing? So we need to restructure our process. Take this for example. I've had some few travels, and even in my local area here in Ghana, I see those similarities. You find businesses that say they're into recycling, so they pick up plastics to recycle. Any way they are doing it goes into play. But what do we see? Who are those involved in those processes? When you go around to check, you realize that these are marginalized people who are involved in this process of selecting, picking up these plastics from huge refuse dam or landfills, which are filled up with a lot of debt that could lead to diseases. Far stretch to it is the fact that you find children of school going age engage in this process. These are marginalized, they are vulnerable. But the fact is that they need money to be able to survive. Their parents need money to be able to survive. So what happens? Businesses do not consider these factors. You realize for a business engaged in circularity, for which within your value chain, your supply, where you have child labor existing, but you don't care, your focus is just like, okay, they're bringing you enough plastics so you can carry on with your business. Then you realize that the fundamental human rights of these children are being violated in a way. When we look at labor works ethics, for those who are engaged in the circularity issues, these women, the men who are out there picking up for particular companies, we see them as informal organizations, informal units. But what happened? Despite they are informal, but they're aligned with a particular organization that they pick and give out these plastics for. What do these companies do? We only see these people at the landfills picking up plastics without any gloves, without any masks. They just go, they inhale whatever scent, touch whatever microorganisms or, excuse me, I'm not a scientist, any virus you can find on the landfill there, and they go. At the end of it, what they do is just to go and sell the plastics and go back home. In the long run, their health are at risk. They are fallen sick. The children are out of school. We need businesses to take these things into considerations so that they set up measures to ensure that, especially when we look at children, that is where that pains me a lot, if I'm to be emotional about the whole conversation, because I see it and I'm like, why do we accept this? Organizations should be ready to promote. We say businesses are part and critical of the SDGs. If we want to achieve them, they play a critical role. And it starts with some of these initiatives. Be ensuring that children are not part of this supply chain. Promoting agendas that ensure that these children go to school, even if their parents are to provide this source of raw materials for businesses. But initiatives should be put in place to prevent these children from going out there, because we are basically violating their human rights. But who cares about it? Who speaks about it? That is an issue we need to consider. I've seen it in a lot of places, and recently in the news, I don't know what happened. I just turned on the television, and that was the conversation. Children being on landfills, picking up plastics while they're supposed to be in school. So businesses engaged in circularity will have to rethink their system. They will have to rethink the processes. As far as much, they have to rethink the outcomes. You can't say you are circular while you have a lot of waste. We know the transition to green renewable energy is kind of expensive, as my colleague Evers talked about, the cost and the benefit of you trying to transition, you trying to be circular in your business. How does it affect you? If it's so much costly, then it will be difficult for business to do that. So even with that, well, we can have a gradual transition. But in terms of the processes, in terms of issues of who pick, in terms of issues of safety of the pickers, these are things that can be initiated immediately in the businesses to go. So I will try to conclude here by saying that as young individuals as we are meant not to repeat some of the mistakes that existing businesses have done. If you're a new entrant business trying to go into circularity, it's a fine agenda. We need to keep our environment clean. Okay, we need to promote social life. Social equality should be part of your agenda. The labor rights should be respected for people, and you should try to ensure that some of these things are looked into. And I'll conclude by giving these 3 issues or these 3 points as a recommendation. One, for a business, you need to go beyond what's causing harm. Don't look at it as because you are trying to pick up plastics, you are trying to reduce waste from the environment. So that makes it even. That is all. You need to go beyond that. You need to look at other issues within your value chain to be able to ensure that this is a more holistic process. And then we can say your business is more secular, contributing to sustainable development. 2, you should ensure that your business does not lead to further harm or further negative impacts. You can say you are trying to protect the environment, whilst at the end of it, you are producing more waste. Whilst at the end of it, you are contributing to child labor. Whilst at the end of it, you are not contributing to decent work, which are all issues the SDGs are pointing out for us to solve. So we need to take major considerations when we are trying to initiate not just circular economic business, any kind of business or initiative at all. These are issues we need to consider. And the last part of it is that we should be mindful of what the negatives and the positive that we bring. So, for example, when we are looking at human rights issues in terms of businesses, it doesn't matter anyhow or how important your business is. As long as your business is positive, but it has a negative impact, especially when we are looking at human rights, then whatever you are doing is wrong. It's just like you saying you are setting up, in terms of the international standards, you're setting up a solar panel business, you're setting up some solar panels, then you force relocation of what? Indigenous people of their lands. Where do you expect them to go? We need better practices. So we should be mindful of some of the positives that we generate and the negatives that we cause. We shouldn't try to say that since we are trying to remove waste from the environment, so whatever negative activity that comes through is justified. It's never justified. It's never justified. And we need to do away with some of these things. Well, if we are able to integrate this, have this at the back of our minds that young individuals going into circularity business, then I'm sure we'll be able to have a more just transition into circularity, have a more holistic system in our business implementation, and then we can say our businesses are sustainable, or we are promoting sustainable development and fighting towards achieving the SDGs. Thank you.
We will go to Udayan Banerjee, who is the co-founder of Clairco.
Hi everybody, nice meeting all. So, and thank you for inviting me here. So, I was just listening to what Sourabh and Akkas and Faisal had to share, and definitely, the points that these guys are making is extremely important. That as we are growing and we are going through a climate crisis, as we say, it is extremely important to understand our impact on the environment and what all things that we can do to make sure it is a circular economy where what the waste that we are generating is either getting recycled or at least upcycled or utilized in some manner. So there's a saying which goes that nothing is actually a waste. Waste. Our mind, interprets things as waste, which we can't probably use right away. But ultimately, everything is a resource, and if we have this mindset where any waste that we are generating, we are treating it as a resource and trying to figure out what can be done, what better way we can upcycle it or recycle it instead of throwing it away. Then a lot of the problems can be looked at instead of a problem, it could be a solution oriented approach where instead of creating new problems and creating new kinds of waste in the market, we can actually figure out ways to reduce that. So in this regard, I will share my screen, bringing into attention one of the waste sources which a lot of people are not aware of, that the impact that it has on overall wastages. So just as a background, Clairco is into the business of air purification for commercial office spaces and malls, etc. So during our operations, like Faisal also mentioned, that when we start any business with a positive mindset or positive goal in mind, where we started Clairco with a goal of reducing the air pollution, what people are facing, and overall improving the health and well-being of people. What we eventually realized that the air filters that we were installing across all our installations were eventually landing into landfills, And then when we thought about and reflected about the scale of this problem, we realized that this is something which definitely immediately needs our attention. And we can't just ignore that. Okay, our job is to clean the air and we don't care about what happens to the discarded filters. So just to give a perspective, this is an estimate of what kind of waste generation we are talking about. So across the globe, there are almost 33 billion square feet of indoor office space, only office space. If we count the overall commercial buildings, it's almost about 45 billion square feet. And for every 1,000 square feet approximately, there is one filter installed as per the standard practices, which means that across the globe, almost 33 million filters are installed, and each filter is somewhere around 1.5 kg in weight, and it has the filter media lens. That this picture that you can see is basically a wide filter media. Each filter has around 2.5 to 5 meters of media length. So if you just do the math, we will realize that every year the filters which are getting replaced in every 12 to 18 months are actually generating a waste of 50 million kg, or almost 160 to 200 million meters of filter media is getting wasted. And this is an extremely huge problem in terms of waste management if we look at. And when we are talking about circular economy, we can't just really ignore this. Okay, this will take care of itself, because the filters that are being used, most of the filters are actually not biodegradable also. So they are made up of some kind of a polypropylene based media, which are a kind of rare kind of plastic. So the only way to uh, read, uh, avoid this waste generation is to incinerate these filters or burn them. But again, that causes its own environmental issues. So we worked with few agencies who are expert at this, and the challenge was that these filters are loaded with dust. So every filter which is getting discarded is actually loaded with dust. So it is not straightforward to just recycle. Just like we recycle your hard plastics, it is not straightforward. You cannot recycle this kind of dusty filter media. So but eventually we partnered with some of the organizations who undertook a R&D project, where they tried to figure out, okay, how do we upcycle this kind of filter media loaded with dust. And eventually we were able to figure out a way where these filter medias can be converted into tiles and coasters, like images that you can see on the right hand side. So this is something exactly what Faisal was also mentioning about, that every business is unique. And while all of us want to have those goals of circular economy and reusing the waste generated and reusing all the resources, many a times the waste itself could be a complicated kind of a waste, which cannot be recycled easily or upcycled easily. But if we are committed to the goal of circular economy, where we are committed to ensure that our business practices, our activities are not impacting the environment harmfully, because we, being a company which promotes sustainability and human wellness and overall climate action, we definitely would be doing an injustice to ourselves, that without, if we generate these kind of wastages. And that is how I think just closing with this idea that every business, every individual, like Saurabh also mentioned, PPP 4P model, where public private people partnership is extremely important, where every individual understands the impact that they are having, their individual impact plus their businesses impact, wherever people are working. So, and we are talking about office spaces across the world, which means that a lot of people who are working in these office spaces are actually beneficiaries of the air filtration technologies. So these so if people are more aware about these kind of activities, that okay, to provide those kind of good air quality, a lot of actions are being taken, but that should not mean that it is we are breathing clean air at the expense of the environment. So that is how that is where I would like to close our my discussion, just with this kind of impact that I was basically talking about, that these kind of initiatives obviously lead to waste reduction. There is a directly positive impact on the environment. It's a sustainable practice because we can't just keep throwing away the filters, etc. And this is also reducing in the carbon emission, because the tiles and coasters that uh, we were able to develop using this waste filter material is actually a carbon negative product, so which means that it reduces carbon emission as well. And eventually this is what is delivering a cleaner indoor air. Because another perspective is that, let's say I collect all the dust in a filter and then I throw it away outside, so that same pollution which I was capturing is actually going back into the environment. So if we are not treating the filters, not recycling or upcycling them, we're actually not solving air pollution as such. We are just taking the pollution from one point to other point, but eventually it is going back to the environment. So in actual real sense, a clean indoor air will be achieved only if this kind of activities are being done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Udayan. Next, we have Selma from Namibia.
So I'm Selma Nasheya. I am based in Namibia, Southern Africa, and I just thought, I'd share about promoting bioregionalism as a way to promote inclusive as well as equitable um, governance pathways in what we do and how we shape development. Yeah, so basically what inspired this thematic topic that I picked is the fact that at the end of the day, although we may be from different countries, coming from, with completely different cultures, one thing that is definitely common to all of us is the planet Earth. And we also see ourselves sometimes traveling to other countries, even though we come from our own indigenous countries. But so this again just shows that the drive for sustainability it is universal and it is global, and it really cuts across all levels of governance. And this really made me question whether, why are we struggling so much with sustainable development? Why are we uh, in some cases, or in many cases, especially in the developed nations, sometimes we tend to find that even though there's a high drive of sustainability initiatives, we still see very little traction happening, especially when it comes to the marginalized, disadvantaged communities. We see capitalism being done differently and still enriching those that are in power, those that are already enriched. So the question is, how do we bridge the gap? How do we try and make development more equitable, even as we initiate what we coin to be sustainable initiatives? And so that was what led to the question of, could it be that the boundaries that we have created are actually the barriers to our own progress? Right. So, with regards to the theme of our panel discussion today, bioregionalism is easily comparable to the conventional governance systems that we sort of operate within, for the majority, I think. And the conventional governance systems are generally linear, where somebody sees an opportunity, or where somebody, whether it's an organization or a person, or even a government, they see an opportunity to tread in there, and and most of the time this is very centralized in terms of how it is, how power and authority is distributed is very centralized, and distribution of resources most of the time quite skewed, because you find that at the bottom you would get those who are working long hours, working very labor intensive, whether it is manually or not manually, but they do they basically do the work. You find that most of these people get less than what the top people earn, whether it is in terms of income, or even whether it is in terms of the quality of life they live. So the question in linear economies that are driven by the general economies, the politics that surrounds us, as well as, of course, the environments in which we operate. You, we it led me to question whether or not this, this is really, how could we change this, or how could we at least influence it for things to be done better? Of course, bioregional concepts and principles are not new. And I think for the most part, sustainability is very much founded on them. But when you look at governance systems, you'd find that even within ESG models, the ecological side of things is very fragmented. It's very, it's usually secluded. When you speak of environment, it is environment, and it's not always integrated into, say, a business model or a governance system always. And this is why we're obviously promoting sustainability practices. But why do I say bioregional governance is more secular, and it actually helps in transforming society compared to the linear model, which is mostly transforming nature because it's very extractive. So within bioregional models, the concept really advocates for humans to be more cognizant in how they shape their development based on the environment, the natural environments within they find themselves. And this is not necessarily only, the natural resources alone, but everything in terms of, the scope and the boundaries within which their environment encompasses. It is important within the bioregional principles that development looks at that, rather than, let's assume you live in a place that's very abundant in water systems and, let's say, fishery resources. What you would find in most places today is you would find that most of these environments are extractive in a way that you would fish for exports where the local people might not necessarily have access to these resources. So whereas the bioregional model actually says, okay, let us look at our needs as a society, let us see what we have around us and maximize that for ourselves, and any surplus we can then ship out, or at least, we can then use that for bartering and trade. But the point is, these decisions are based on the bioregional strengths as opposed to capitalistic notions. So bioregions are really distinct, like I said, ecological areas that are defined by their natural boundaries, and the elements that you find in those areas, rather than simply geopolitical boundaries as we generally see the world today. And bioregionalism also drives grassroots interest. Like I said, the people who know their area, who know their country, their places, doesn't really have to be a country, because countries are now, that is what is defined by geopolitical boundaries. But, if you come from a specific area, even within a region or a country, there are certain things that are very unique in those areas and that are known. And there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that is captured by the people in those areas that often is sidelined when development is shaped. And most of it is actually lost. I mean, look at how we are today. I'm sure back in the days, not to say that we will go back in the days, but back in the days, we didn't probably wear the clothes or the styles we wear today, but today we almost all are gearing towards a Western model. So this just shows us how different governing systems influence how we live and how we choose to shape our development. Next slide. So why do we have to care about this? I mean, why is it even necessary to talk about bioregionalism today, for example? I mean, we all know that we have the SDGs, of which the entire world is gearing towards, and trying to meet the targets, but yet we fall behind. The infographic on in the presentation there comes from last year's UN report, and it still shows a whole disparity in terms of how people are living on the world. For example, 1 billion people are still living in slums despite efforts of sustainability, despite whatever is being done. I'm not saying what is being done is irrelevant, but I'm saying perhaps we could also explore the current status quo, so that when we speak of sustainability, we don't only speak of it in terms of an actual initiative or an opportunity, but we look at it more holistically and more long term. So, and again, this matters because all of biodiversity, no matter how big or small it is very unique and is connected globally. And as we all know, there are a couple of organisms that have gone extinct as a result of how we are living. And this is an opportunity cost to us because we don't know what we have lost or what we are yet to lose. So all life on the earth really does matter. And of course, as we know about the phenomenon of global warming and the effects of climate change, it befalls us all, whether animals or or people or non-living things. So how we govern our societies to shape development really does matter in trying to make the difference that we want to see in terms of sustainability. And I thought I'll just add to say that on the 2nd of August this year, we also learned that we actually reached World Overshoot Day, which means that that was the day when humanity started to consume more than what the planet is actually producing in general. So, and I think this is of concern, and we really need to relook how we do our governance systems. So once again, enhancing bioregional integrity, I believe, will drive integral societies. Next, please. Right. So, I mean, just to kind of sum up all that talk about bioregionalism, what does it mean, or how could you consolidate and sum it up? Basically, what I'm saying is using a more bioregional approach in anything you do, especially from a governance perspective, just means that you are basically making your decisions beyond a geopolitical stance to a more ecological understanding, or basing it more on the ecological understanding of your area and the area, and perhaps the areas around where you live. And this would help us in reducing waste, in reducing our footprints in many, many ways, and also in terms of optimizing our connections. And also, the approach helps us to organize our activities in harmony with ecological rhythms naturally, inherently, without needing to say, oh, I would have to, as a business or as a government, I'd have to budget, 20,000, say, dollars to build a school. No, you would actually make decisions that are based on real needs, based on your area and your environment. Not necessarily. I mean, this will be holistically integrated needs, not necessarily just the number that you come up with because we need to plant more trees. You would even be able to be more specific to say which kind of trees need to be planted, perhaps how many of them, because of their impact, because you would have a better understanding of the ecology around you. Yes, so once again, it helps us to move beyond the geopolitical boundaries we know to more nature-centric systems. And some of the advantages of bioregionalism, as I sort of briefly outlined, is it helps us to reduce pollution in general. It helps us to develop and grow positive economic growth. And it also helps us to optimize and enhance our conservation efforts. So the idea of bioregionalism really is an opportunity to scale inclusive co-creation and innovation. Next. Yeah, so just just as a generic overarching overview, I thought I'd also just highlight some of the relevance of bioregions. And as I also alluded to earlier, it helps to promote localized, inclusive, and equitable development, of which today we see that there's still a huge gap when it comes to the inclusivity, as well as the equitable distribution of whether it's benefits or resources. In bioregions, you are able to actually engage even the elderly. They will not be seen as redundant in society, but they would actually be holders of rich knowledge and wisdom that can be used in how societies shape and develop themselves. You would be able to engage the children to imagine and to shape, also to support the shaping of development based on the changes, the dynamic changes that they see as they grow up. And instead of getting stuck in a time, and then you feel, oh, but back in the days it wasn't like this. Of course things will be changing, as change is the only constant. But when you include everybody, then I think everybody gets a chance to adapt to the changes flexibly. It also helps to incorporate the indigenous rights and local governance into whatever policies and frameworks that are developed, rather than saying, oh, okay, so our government has attended a UN conference, country XYZ has come up with this, so maybe we should adopt that legislation and bring it to our home country or our home area. No, no, no. It doesn't have to be a copy and paste approach. In fact, it will be a very unique way of creating governance, local governance systems. Of course, it helps to enhance and optimize socioeconomic and ecological sustainability. In doing so, we're able to reduce carbon emissions, and waste will be seen as an asset. And in doing that, we actually promote a more circular economy, and we also promote responsible production and consumption, while having the grassroots interests pioneer global goals. Next. So how can we, as the youth, participate? I mean, governance is something that you often find with, or you most of the time, I think it's a universal assumption to say that it's usually the old people that are involved, or it's the ones that are connected to the big names that are involved. But no, each and every one of us can do something. We can engage, or rather let's start with educating ourselves, and also then educating our local communities, our networks. I mean, I gave there an example to say we could even launch a global campaign where we encourage people at different levels, whether it's from kindergarten to university, to know their bioregions, and create some really interesting data and statistics that perhaps could even create a database for everyone to access, and that would even be a business opportunity in its own, in terms of driving investments and so forth. We could integrate the ideas of bioregionalism into schools and different institutions and programs in order for people to be more aware. And of course, by raising more awareness about bioregional aspects, we are also able to shape our development in a more tailor-made way. We can engage with our communities through workshops and dialogues, as we are doing today. We can also have digital platforms, of course, as we're doing today, and use interactive maps, for example, to understand each other's bioregions better. Perhaps maybe that would even encourage more tourism, for example. And sometimes it might not necessarily be just, it might not require me to necessarily travel, for instance, to India. But for someone who's, say, disabled and unable to afford a trip to India, they could, through this interactive maps, learn about India and see what's there that they might have never seen before, or even within their own country or region. And of course, by engaging with one another, we are able to also have opportunities to document these stories, to document these images, and document opportunities of the different bioregions. Next. Yeah, so the theory of change for promoting bioregionalism is really to say that if we do promote it, and if we do base our governance systems on the resources around us, we will then be able to shape modern development in a way that supports ecological health as well as human prosperity. And in doing that, we are able to drive thriving economies and at the same time align with the planet's rhythms and hopefully, not exacerbate, climate change, for example. Next. Oh, that slide was supposed to come after the other, but never mind. Another way we can promote and engage with bioregionalism is through empowerment. We can empower ourselves and others by supporting the local circular economies and businesses, just as the previous presenter showcased, for example. We can also establish bioregional councils so that indigenous and local communities can voice in how their land is managed. We can also participate in the actual policy frameworks by lobbying for policy changes to incorporate ideologies that support bioregionalism in our governing systems and structures and legislations. We can also recognize and prioritize bioregions in planning and development, and as well as optimizing shared resources. Okay, next please. So my call to action for the youth who are present today and who might have access to this is to say, let each one of us become a bioregional champion. Let us connect with our local and global strategic groups and partners as we are doing today. Let us continue to organize dialogues and community discussions that support sustainable trajectories for development. Let us support sustainable initiatives and champion the bioregion blueprint at all governance levels. Next. So in short, a bioregional approach really helps us to drive economic growth. It does not take away from the drive for economic growth and development. It helps us to enhance quality of life, which is more inclusive and equitable. And at the same time, it helps us to preserve our cultural heritage, making our global diversity truly unique and also very interesting. Yes, thank you very much for your time and attention. And I just thought, I would caption that to say every change, every monumental change starts with a single step. I mean, we all know what they say, Rome was not built overnight or something like that. But certainly together we can embrace the bioregion blueprint for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Selma, for your presentation. Now we will have a question answer round where I'll ask question to each one of you, and you can of course bring in examples and answer the question. So Mr. Sourabh Kumar, sir, what do you think that what are the innovative strategies and policies can be implemented to encourage industries and businesses in India to adopt circular economy practices and reduce waste generation globally?
See, honestly, if I have to answer this question, the waste generation is not going to reduce. So let's be very honest and blunt with this thought process. The waste generation is not going to reduce in the world. The way we have to deal with waste for sure can be changed. For example, I'll give you a reference of what we do in our company. We're making roads from plastic waste. Now, the amount of plastic generation that the world will see is going to go high. How much ever we bring in terms of policy, how much ever we kind of pressurize the companies in bringing better alternatives. The reality is that still there is no better alternative than plastic for a lot of industries. But at the same time, the companies are now also becoming responsible, and that is where these policies start making some difference, right? For example, end of user responsibility. Now, if let's say a company like Coca-Cola is selling in plastic bottles, now how can they also partner with organizations wherein it may be impossible for them to collect back, but that can be then transferred to the right recyclers, which in turn can be turned into meaningful products. Like as I mentioned that what we are doing is we are making plastic, rolls from plastic waste. Now it's the same process wherein large chunk of the plastic waste that comes to our factories are from industries, and a significant amount of plastic waste is coming from the municipal waste. Now, if the recipient, if we come up with innovative solutions which can translate that into something meaningful, then we are there. Otherwise, we can keep talking about this and the world will keep moving on. I mean, the companies which are developed as of now, they might be feeling that now we have spoiled the world to a very large extent. But think about, emerging countries which are in Asia, which are in Africa. Some of the countries are still underdeveloped. So they have not even seen the light of development. And now, forcing them to not use meaningful products, innovative technologies, will actually put them back at least 100 years. So, what I'm trying to actually say is that while we are moving ahead, we have to be responsible in terms of the way the waste will be utilized. Otherwise, it's going to end up in landfills. So, I'll just sum up the answer. The amount of waste that will be that the world will see, it is not going to reduce. It's going to increase, but the way we have to reuse and maybe come up with innovative products, that definitely is on a high. And that is where we have to be bullish on that particular thought, that yes, we will see the change, and the change will happen with the kind of panelists that we see over here who are there to bring in the positive impact across the world. And probably people who are attending this conference, they might get inspired and they come up with something innovative in terms of how do we not see waste as a waste, but can we start seeing waste as a good. So that's where the world will move towards.
Thank you so much, sir. And my next question is for Udayan. So, what do you think that what uh, what role can technology and innovation play in optimizing waste collection, sorting, and recycling process, and how can this solution be scaled up across different regions in India and globally?
Sure. Thanks, Manisha, for that question. So that's a very interesting question. So I'll basically two parts. One is what is the role of technology and innovation, and secondly, how do we scale it up? So, like Sourabh also mentioned, so for technological innovation, people's participation is required, where people are educated, and then more and more people collaborate together to bring in innovative technologies to make it easier for waste to be recycled. For example, very simple technologies can be, if we can come up with a dustbin which automatically segregates or automatically processes some kind of waste. Like say if somebody is putting something into the, let's say, dry waste into the dustbin, and it probably, instead of somebody is coming and collecting the waste and then it is going to the waste dumping yard, there could be easier ways to do it. Like public dustbin could be like vending machines, where on one side you're putting waste and other side something is coming up which can be utilized. So I'm just thinking out loud. So these kind of scalable, decentralized technologies have to be developed not just on the technology side in the sense of information technology. Information technology definitely will play a very very small important role to disseminate information, optimize operations. At the more technology we have, easier it is to handle scale. So handling scale, obviously that kind of technologies already exist, but innovation is required in the way waste is collected and it is segregated and then it is processed. So if this whole process can be made less tedious, then probably we can see a lot of adoption of waste management practices. Plus another innovation probably could be in a way that you know the- that like same mindset, that we mindset shift that we are talking about. If people start treating waste as a resource, then automatically that mindset shift happens, and then creative ideas keep coming in, and eventually somebody will come up with something really revolutionary. Maybe us or somebody in the audience or somebody will come up with something really revolutionary, which will make us question, okay, why didn't we think about it sooner, right? So I think definitely innovation is required to make the overall waste management, waste handling process simpler.
Thank you so much, sir. My next question is for Faisal. Sir, what do you think, like in a diverse socio-economic world background, how can circular economy initiatives be designed to ensure inclusivity and equitable benefits for all the communities around the world?
That's a tough one there. I think you see the idea of or the concept that we are moving on right now with circular economy um, is something that could reach everybody, that could be inclusive when we try to ensure that we have a better understanding of who are the users of various resources, that products that we produce at the end of every area or globally. We have different areas, we have different communities. If we really want to make circularity more inclusive, then it will have to start with how we implement it to start with. And our implementation process of it in various places, we just have to consider the diverse groups of people that the system is going to meet, or who we are trying to reach out to. We have different group of people. Like for example, we have people who are we have literates, we have illiterates, we have people who are far away from major centers where circularity initiatives takes place. But how do we get all these people to fall on board or come on board to be able to understand what we are trying to do? When you come to my local area places here, and you even tell people that, okay, there's revenue being made out of what? Waste. The next question somebody asks you is that, how much do I make from that? Which makes it complicated, because for some, how much do you give me? It's better I just throw my waste down there and just go away, because I'm not going to get so much from it. There's somebody again who understands that, well, it's not all about the money that we are going to give you, but what? We are protecting the environment at the long run. So you realize that we need to channel the conversation into which we are trying to attract people. It shouldn't only focus on, okay, there's money for waste, especially when you come to local areas where I come from, for example. If you just say there's money for waste, then it really wouldn't sell. Yes, some people might just take time to mobilize plastics to go and give it out for some to get some monies out of it. But they come and say that, and ask themselves, how much have I made from this? If I was doing something else, maybe I would have gotten something else. So we need to change the conversation, in as much as, yes, we want people to get certain revenues from this, but we need to let them understand that it goes beyond what? Revenue. It goes beyond the money. Imagine you fall sick out of the plastic waste, the rains that comes, the malaria. Right now, whatever money that we give you right now wouldn't be able to treat you when you go to the hospital. It wouldn't get you better. We need to change the conversation to be able to bring everybody. When people start to understand these diverse opinions as to what circularity seeks to achieve, and not just the regular, oh, sell your plastic, we're going to give you money. Sell your plastic, we're going to give you money. Then we will not be able to bring everybody on board to some region. For some people will come on board, and they will try to do it. Some people even dispose their waste in a segregated way without even looking for money because they know the health implications of it. But for some, it's all about the money. So we need to be able to integrate these various opinions, these various ideologies into our implementation process so that we let people know that, yes, on one hand, we are trying to give you money for you being able to what? Put up your plastics, segregate them, and give it back to us to recycle. But on the other hand, too, if we don't do this, if we continuously leave these plastics, these are the, evidence-based research has a bigger role to play here. People need to see what the outcomes of not doing it looks like. People need to hear, and not just by word of mouth, but people need to see, people need to hear. With this, we'll be able to what? Have that behavioral change that we need, and we'll be able to have a more inclusive system where people are willing and coming on board to be able to do this. And it also goes to how businesses are willing to what? Implement it. Everything will come with a little bit of cost from a business perspective. But in the long run, too, we know there's also going to be a lot of benefit from it. So businesses should be looking at the long term in any initiative or activity that they are willing to do. And that is why I was saying, one of the main idea or concept we need to promote is what? We should go beyond avoiding harm. So it shouldn't just be, I want to take off the plastics out of the environment. We need to go beyond that. In our initiatives, we need to go beyond that. What do you do else? Okay, if you want to collect the plastics, there are certain people who are far away from regional capitals where plastics are. Okay, but now how do we reach them? I remember when I was in school in India, my electronic devices got spoiled. Twice per se, my chargers. But here it is. There are companies who are in charge of this, who are promoting the extended producer responsibility, but they are not located where we are. So how do I get to be part of that journey of what? Making the environment much better, and what? Even let's keep the monetary aspect out. But how do I get to be part of that journey of saying I want to make the environment better? Because I don't know where I'm going to send these electronic devices, the chargers. I don't know where I'm going to send them. So at the end of it, I just dispose them. And the next person who comes for it disposes them. Then it ends up on the landfill. So we need to be able to stretch out the way we want to, even with the extended producer responsibility. You look at it, they are only meant in bigger cities and places. Okay, I had a conversation back then when I was in India with the electronic industry, and some of the issue they tell you is that they claim they are not electronic waste because longevity is now taking place. But some also say there's a lot of electronic waste. But where are they? They are far, far in the hinterlands where people cannot get access to what? Giving them back. And the businesses are only focused on what? In major cities where they can collect them back. So how do we get these people to be inclusive in this journey? So we need to extend our arm. We need to stretch much further. We need to educate people much better and let them know the dynamics of what we are talking about, and not just be centered on one place where it's all about money, it's all about money, it's all about money. For somebody like me, how much am I going to get from it? And there are other people out there. The health aspect of it, the environmental aspect of it, needs to also play a central role in the conversation for us to be able to promote this inclusivity we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. My next question is for Akkas. How do you think that developing nations can adopt effective transition towards a circular economy model to address its growing waste management challenges and promote sustainable resource utilization?
Sorry, ma'am, I can't hear the question.
Okay.
Even I didn't.
Manisha,
Please, can you please repeat? Yes, sir. Can you please repeat?
Am I audible?
Yes, it is. Now it's okay.
Okay, so I asked that how do you think the developing nations effectively adapt transition towards a circular economy model to address its growing waste management challenges and promote sustainable resource utilizations?
Okay, it is very good question. Developing nation can push the underdeveloped or growing economic country, and they can share the technology, they can share the resource to the country like Bangladesh, the advanced technologies. For example, if developing nation can share the technology and machineries to Bangladesh, Bangladesh can adopt that technology with minimum cost, and they even can recycle their waste. They can plant different location in case of different localities, different region. By that, different municipal authority will take action in case of honest in Bangladesh sustainability practice in textile industries. The whatever the textile industries are doing, it is all about the buyer effect, or I can say the consumer preference. See, nowadays in developing nation, the consumer from developing nation are always looking for sustainable product. Okay, so by that, by their demand and to adopt the sustainability model or circular economy model, and they are trying to minimize their waste, they are trying to minimize their water reduction, they are trying to implementing EZB boiler and effluent treatment plant and all things. So only the development nation can push to the country like developing country. For me,
Thank you so much,
okay.
Akkas. My next question is for Selma. What do you think that considering the informal sector significant contribution to waste management in different countries, how can collaboration and integration between formal and informal sector be fostered to enhance waste reduction efforts? Selma, are you there?
That is for sure is I think it starts from the governing systems, because a lot of the informalities that we're seeing in present day formal systems, I think have actually been derived from historical governance systems, I would say. And as a result, present governing systems have adopted some of these ills, and unfortunately, they are coupled together with the economic inequalities that force informal settlements to increase. And as a result of that, that is why I say it comes back to our governing system. So inclusivity is a key word that must always be not just in the regulations and legislation, but we must see it in practice. And it is through governing systems that the formal sector would be, I would say, forced in this case, to make sure that however they do business, for example, however development takes place in the formal sectors, must always give back to the informal sectors one way or the other. I'll give an example here in my country. We call my capital city a city of two tails, a city of two tails, because you have people, for example, who have toilets in their homes, and there are those that obviously do not have toilets in their homes, and the realities are completely two different things. And you would find that those that are working in the formal side, majority of these people come from the informal sectors, yet we go about doing business as usual, as though it is normal, when it is really not. We have major sanitation and waste issues as a result of this inequalities. And so I say again, the governance systems are the primary space where we can actually enact change for the formal sector to really do anything, because I find that when something is not legislated, formal sectors generally have liberty to make their own decisions, and then this also means that if it means optimizing on your profit margins, you would probably not prioritize giving back to the informal sector. And of course, there's also an opportunity for collaborative initiatives or strategic collaborations and partnerships to happen. Of course, it's not just the formal sector's responsibility to transform the informal sector, but there's deep need to educate those that are in the informal sectors. And from my experience of engaging with people in informal sectors, you'd find that most of them know only what they know. They don't know alternatives, they don't know many options, or they feel helpless to the fact that they cannot access alternatives even if they knew about them. So engagement as well as compliance and governing structures, I think, are one sure way to drive change and transformative change in society when it comes to circularity as well as waste reduction.
Thank you so much, Selma. It was really a great panel discussion hearing about your change making journey, adapting and implementing SDG 12, that is circular economy and waste reduction. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We have Ms. Sapna Narula, the president of GNSD, Global Network for Sustainable Development, and also the dean of Nalanda University Sustainable Management School. I will ask a last question to all the panelists present here, and Sapna ma'am, you can also take part and you can discuss among yourselves. The last question is, given the fact that the entire world, is focusing in achieving the sustainable development goals, keeping in mind that SDG 4 plays a very important role, which is quality education. Given the challenges of consumer behavior and awareness, how can educational campaign and public outreach be effectively designed to promote waste reduction, resource efficiency, and responsible consumption among all the countries at this point of time? Because I personally believe that it is a need of the hour.
To speak to it.
This question is addressed to whom?
Ma'am, to everybody. The last question is for everybody.
So, is there
Yes.
any volunteer? Yeah, Faisal.
Okay, so yes, education obviously plays a very important role here, and I think yes, for we the adults, we've seen. I will not say we've seen it all, but we've seen it. But it's high time we go back to the basics. And going back to the basics here means that what? If we want to see 2030, for which things are getting better, then we need to go back to the basics of education. At the university level, we are people at the university level, tertiary level, who can make better, more informed decisions. If they don't, then they are refusing to make those better informed decisions. But if we go back to the basics, then we can be able to integrate all these concepts. I don't see these concepts are too big for people to consume, especially today's world where we have a lot of technology and children using technology to do a lot of things that even we, the adults per se, we cannot do. We need to go back to the basics. We need to be able to teach some of these things. It shouldn't be a major program for people to learn. It should just be an additional concept that will be added to the educational system for children to learn as they grow. And at each step, we need to keep reminding. It shouldn't be that system like, let's say, in my area here, where learnings are more or less like when you learn a particular subject, you move to the next stage and it is off. You don't get to learn about it. You don't get to hear it again. Then they say, if you don't get it the first time, then you will never get it. These are supposed to be continuous learning process for the kids that are coming up until they get to that place where we know that they can make informed decision. And trust me, it will just be like we'll open their brains and put this into them. They will get it and they will know it. We need to be able to do some of these things. And again, education now should be centered on more behavioral change initiatives to be able to change behavior. We are suffering from circular economy because people are refusing to change behaviors. That is one basic issue about waste, rather, not circular economy, but waste. People are refusing to change behaviors. I see a waste bin, but I still prefer to throw my plastic by the waste bin. It's just like opening the waste bin and putting the plastic within that 1 second or 2 seconds might cut off my hand, excuse me to say. You know, I just prefer to throw it down there. So we need to tune education towards behavioral change education in a way, especially when we're looking at adults. And I think this way we'll be able to have success in promoting the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Manisha. You have posed this question to me as well. Can you hear me all? Yeah. So, in fact, educational institutions can bring a lot of societal change, but we have to ask ourselves what kind of education. If you see our, old conventional school of thought, our older families, our indigenous thoughts, especially in India and other developing countries, we are always in the habit of circularity, sharing, reducing, recycle, reusing. But the modern education actually changed our mindset, where we focused on overconsumption and throwing the waste, as Saurabh in his first slide showed us, and I go back to that. So this linear economy is has been taught to us through modern education, and now we are talking about circular economy. So we need to ask ourselves what kind of educational system we need to follow, and how education can bring societal change. They can make a lot of difference, because not only educations but other institutions like NGOs, as well as those organizations, business houses, we they can do a lot of change. But again, what kind of curriculum and what we need to be taught, right? So the conventional marketing principles which focus on overconsumption, uh, I don't think we should comply with those. So that's it.
Thank you so much for participating and taking out time.